everybody, and welcome to this all-new episode of the Northern Virginia Sports Report. I'm your host, Monica Moore, and we have a fantastic program for you tonight. As always, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by Paul Frummelt from the Fairfax County Times and Phil Palazzati, assistant coach of the Lake Braddock boys lacrosse team. But before we jump into everything, we want to thank the folks that help make our program possible. First of all, our good friends at CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs. Also, special thanks to Craig Sterbutzel and to Dan Sousa for all the fantastic photos and content that they provide each and every week. Don't forget that, special thanks to our sponsor, Triple Edge Lacrosse, for sponsoring the lacrosse segment all spring. And don't forget that you can get copies of this program at www.pressboxvideo.com. Don't forget to check out our website with the Video Vault feature that has highlights, interviews, and more. And don't forget to become a fan of the Fairfax Sports Network on our Facebook page. Finally, please do send us any news, story ideas, suggestions, or comments that you have. We read all the emails and we really appreciate all the feedback. Well, this week we are just going to jump right into it. Tons going on. So guys, with the Triple Edge Boys Lacrosse segment, all the districts very far along into district tournament play.
Exactly, Monica. Hi, I'm Paul Frummelt with the Fairfax County Times. Phil Palazzati, assistant lacrosse coach at Lake Braddock. So just jumping right in, let's jump right into the Triple Edge boys lacrosse rankings and take a look at which teams are where, and Langley right there, Phil, at number 1.
Yeah, and they've been there now for a while, since West Springfield had that loss earlier in the season now against Woodson. And you've got a little change this week. It was very interesting. We've got Langley with 12 first place votes, Annandale with 4, Chantilly 1, and Robinson 1.
And what you see Woodson there at number 5. We're going to go away from those rankings real quick to talk with John Fitzgerald, the head coach of the Woodson Cavaliers. John, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Hey, Coach, how you doing? So, finals of the Patriot District against Annandale. You guys got to feel pretty excited to be in this position.
Oh, absolutely. We had kind of an arduous beginning to our season. Weren't really clicking, had some team chemistry issues. But getting down to the most important part of the season, we feel like we're playing our best lacrosse at this point.
In the Patriot District, excuse me. So just looking at what your team has, what do you guys have to do on Friday to beat Annandale?
Well, they're a tough team, extremely well coached by Bill McGlisco, one of the best coaches in the region. And they're blue-collar, hard-working kids, very tough on ground balls, especially in between the restraining lines. So we've got to match their physicality to begin with. And then offensively, move the ball, get the most out of our balance. We feel we have pretty good balance of scoring on offense. And defensively, get in the hole and negate transition opportunities because that's where Annandale killed us in our regular season loss back in mid-April.
Yeah. Hey, Coach, Phil Palazzati.
Hey, Phil.
How are you? Looking back at that game in mid-April, it was an 8-6 ball game. Annandale won. What type of motivation does that give you moving forward? Does it help, do you think?
Well, I told the team that there's been a rivalry between Woodson and Annandale since Woodson opened in 1962, and only 5 miles separates us from on the Little River Turnpike. So there's been a strong tradition of rivalry for years, and for Annandale to come in and beat us the way they did, I think my guys will respond pretty well and play better just because of how well Annandale played. And we didn't really feel we played to our potential, not taking anything away from Annandale.
Right.
They're a great team.
Yeah. Now, I'm interested in this battle, specifically. I think the face-off matchup is going to be huge, personally. And I didn't get a chance to see that first matchup, but having played those both you guys the other day and Annandale earlier in the year, it was one of the things that killed us in our games against both opponents. And I think it's going to be real exciting looking at that particular matchup. What are your thoughts there?
Well, absolutely. Number 32 is arguably Annandale's best player, in addition to number 25.
Right.
And we put a lot of time into improving our face-off game, and because we feel that's probably the most important part of the game. I mean, if you're leading a team by 2 or 3 goals in the third quarter, then you win 6 or 7 straight face-offs. Maybe you're leading by 6 or 7. Yeah. So they have an excellent face-off game. I think our face-off game has improved a lot. It's going to be a war in between the stripes, like I like to tell my players. So I think that will be a factor as to who wins the game, who does a better job of winning the face-offs, and the overall ground ball battle in between the string lines.
WT Woodson ranked right now at number 5 in the Triple H Lacrosse boys rankings, beating West Potomac 20-1 in the first round of the Patriot District tournament, then beating Lake Braddock 12-7. Coach, you guys came into the Patriot District this year. A lot of people thought, myself included, that you'd immediately be a player in this district, and that's kind of shown now because now you're in the finals. How can you compare the Patriot to the Liberty this year?
Not much of a drop-off. I kind of look at like, for example, West Springfield and Annandale, very similar to Langley and Madison going into it. So the level of competition hasn't dropped off too much. It's just refreshing to play against new teams. When I started coaching years ago, we were in the Northern District, and one of the first, early rivalries that I coached against were West Springfield, Lake Braddock, Annandale, and so on. So it's kind of a return for me back to my first few years of coaching at Woodson. But I don't see too much of a drop-off. I think both districts are equally potent.
Yeah, that's for sure. It was interesting. You mentioned that you had a sluggish start to the season. Did you feel, with that being the case, did you feel that the snow played a part in that?
I'm not a big excuse maker, but
yeah.
I call it Snowmageddon.
Yeah, right.
I went to college upstate New York, played for Cortland, lacrosse for Cortland, and that's called the Snow Belt. And
that's for sure.
Maybe my memory is fading, but I don't remember anything like what occurred in February. And then when practice started February 22nd, we had 2 basketball teams still playing, and no field space, no turf. So it was quite a challenge. And I would imagine that our progress, early season progress, was affected. It's really tough to replicate ground balls and full field settings when you're in a gym or a half a gym or the tennis courts. So I think it may have had a factor in our early season sluggish start.
Yeah. Well, I know it did hurt some of the other teams. And again, you don't want to make excuses, but I think personally that it did hurt. And seeing how you guys are playing now, I mean, it's exciting to see, that level of lacrosse. I mean, we had our hands full the other day. That's for sure.
Well, you guys definitely had a great game plan, and I think we played one of our better games in the second half. Yeah. So I think it was a good game. I think you guys gave us everything we could handle.
Oh, thanks.
All right, well, that's WT Woodson head coach John Fitzgerald. His Cavaliers play the Annandale Adams on May 14th. Coach, best of luck to you.
Okay, and thanks for having me on the show, and thanks for covering lacrosse.
All right,
Thank
Coach,
you.
thanks.
So he mentioned it, Phil, and it's one thing. I was at that Annandale Woodson game, the 8-6 win for Annandale, and Monica and I were talking, and we really thought that this was rebooting the rivalry because now they're in the same district. They are so close, such 2 great programs for years, and it's turning out that way. What better than playing each other in the finals? Yeah,
it's going to be a very exciting lacrosse game. I mean, and Coach hit the nail on the head. They are Annandale. They are very scrappy. With that being said, they've got some excellent lacrosse players. I mean, up and down the field, whether it's on the defensive end, whether it's the midfield, or whether it's the attack. And now Woodson matches that. So, it could be another low-scoring game, or it could be, a little bit more high-scoring because, Woodson's playing better offensively. Annandale's now playing better offensively. So,
one thing Coach Bill McGlisco over at Annandale told me was he didn't think Woodson played their best game when they first met, and I'm sure Coach Fitzgerald would agree. So it's going to be interesting to see which team can come out on top. Again, only a 2-goal game in their first meeting. Let's jump back into the rankings here.
Yeah.
We have Woodson there at number 5.
Right.
And you mentioned a lot of different first place votes for the top 4.
Yeah, and not surprising, but you see a little bit of the parity coming into play there. You're looking at 168 points total for Langley, and then you got Annandale and Chantilly only separated by 1 point for that number 2 spot. So, and then you got Robinson at 123 and Woodson at 101, and Woodson made a jump from 7 up to 5, so they made a jump a couple spots, and they could be number 2 by the end of the week, depending on what the outcome of that Annandale game is, and then Chantilly could be number 2 depending on their game too. So, I think we got a lot of exciting lacrosse to look forward to, and it's going to be great to see how it all plays out.
So out of 18 coaches that voted, 4 think Annandale is the best team in the area, and they're going to be playing Woodson. Another thing to mention is West Springfield dropping from number 2 all the way down to number 6, and they had that loss, and they'll be in the region tournament, and they're still a very dangerous team.
Yeah, they're extremely dangerous, and they may be getting a couple of the guys back that they had from suspension. And I don't want to say that played a part in it, but sometimes the team chemistry is affected, and they may not have had the leadership from those 2 guys on that field the other night, and who knows? It could have played the part. And moving forward, that's a team that you're not sure that you want to play them in the regional tournament. They'll be seeded 3rd coming out of the Patriot District. They'll have to play the Concord 2, and that could be tough for either Robinson or Chantilly.
Well, I'd say with the parity and the amount of talent in this Northern region, all 16 teams that will play in the Northern region tournament are going to be good teams and teams you don't want to play. But let's just jump.
Yeah.
Let's jump into the Liberty District tournament. Let's look at the graphics. Beautiful graphic there for the Liberty District tournament. And you see Langley getting it done against Marshall, South Lakes barely beating Fairfax. We said that was going to be an interesting game, and it certainly was. Stonebridge getting by Thomas Jefferson with a nice showing with 10 goals there in Madison. Beating McLean again. We said not much parity there in the beginning in the quarterfinals, but now we get to the semifinals, and Madison just getting by Stonebridge and Langley taking care of business against South Lakes, setting up Madison-Langley, a game that a lot of us expected.
Yeah, and you know what jumps out at me is Madison is scoring a heck of a lot of goals. And although Langley scored a heck of a lot of goals, but then you look back at their matchup back in March, I believe it might have been the first game of the year for both teams, and it was a 9-6 ball game. So what are we going to see now? And I think that lower scoring game plays into the style that Langley seems to play a little bit more than the Madison. Madison is more run and gun. They love to get up and down the field. So how that all plays out is going to be very interesting. Madison, I think, in all of their wins, if I remember correctly, in all of their wins, they didn't score less than 14 goals. And in their losses, they didn't score above 7. So if they can get that mark of 13, 14 goals, who the heck knows?
In Madison, a team, if you look at their record, I had an article saying they were forged in fire this year, lost to Langley in the first game of the season, lost to West Springfield, lost to a bunch of prep schools, Landon, Georgetown Prep. They played a really tough schedule, and it's paying off right now. They're now in the finals of the Liberty District. And let's move on to the Patriot District. We talked about it already, but you see Woodson, Annandale right there, and the big game was Annandale beating West Springfield. Number 1 in our rankings for quite a bit of the year was West Springfield, losing by 3 goals to Annandale, setting up the Annandale-Woodson final.
Yeah, and we talked about it. This is going to be one heck of a lacrosse game, because both teams can play physically, because both teams are good on ground balls. They're fundamentally sound. They play great defense. They're very offensive disciplined, offensively disciplined, and it's just going to be exciting to see that. Woodson was number 1 in the Patriot District. Annandale was number 3, and yet you go back to the top 10, Annandale's got 4 first-place votes in the poll. by the coaches. So, it could be, again, another fantastic lacrosse game.
And how about your Bruins beating Lee 9-8 in overtime to make it to the region tournament?
Yeah, and we had a very good game plan. I was excited to the fact that we executed it, and we actually scored more goals in that game than we had combined in the previous couple of games. So it was exciting to see that. And then we drew Woodson, and we knew that we had to stick to our game plan, and we did, and we played pretty well. They just had too much for us, and that's a credit to them. They're a very good lacrosse team, and and then you look at the West Springfield and the Annandale game, 3 goals. I mean, that was the difference, and Annandale played well defensively, and they limited a lot of what West Springfield could do.
You're looking at the Patriot District All-District first team, just going through that list, and one thing to touch on is Eric Schauder, West Springfield Player of the Year. TC gets the Coach of the Year.
Yeah, and he's done a great job over there. He's brought them back to being competitive against the better teams in the district, and who knows, he could, in a year or two, he could have them contending for the Patriot District Championship if he continues along the path that he started earlier in the year.
Let's jump over to the National District that might not get as much love as it should here on the show, but the National District right there, Washington Lee easily beating Wakefield in the first round, having some problems with Edison, but still winning by 2 goals. You see number 3 seed Yorktown, they're easily beating Stewart, and again, a close game against number 2 Mount Vernon. So you have a Washington and Lee versus Yorktown matchup in the boys tournament finals.
Yeah, and Washington Lee, Mount Vernon, and Yorktown were very evenly matched, skill-wise, lacrosse-wise. Down the board. I think it came to, they call it a coin flip, but I don't think it was really a coin flip that determined the 1, 2, 3 seeds. Each team beat the other and so forth and so forth. In Yorktown earlier in April, in mid-April, beat, Washington Lee 8-5. So, looking at these scores, I think that's probably going to be the neighborhood of the score again. Now it could go the other way, so you just don't know, they're playing good lacrosse, and that's what's exciting.
Again, to note that 4-5 game in the National District at 14-13, Edison winning. Again, we said it that these 4-5 games are going to be entertaining, and they were.
Yeah.
Right now, you're looking at the National District All-District first team. Ryan Beck from Stewart gets Coach of the Year. Brendan Doyle from Mount Vernon, the Offensive Player of the Year. And Roy Devine from Yorktown, the Defensive Player of the Year for the National District.
Yeah, and they've got a lot of good players in the National District that sometimes get overshadowed because of the other 3 districts that are quote unquote a little bit more powerful. And sometimes it's not fair, but they've got some kids that can play, and we'll see that as they move forward. Let's play in the region.
Let's move on to the Concord District, another district that doesn't get as much love as it probably should, but you see the 6-team district, Robinson and Chantilly, automatically into the Northern Region tournament with that first round bye. Herndon, actually Oakton, playing like a team we've been seeing the last couple of weeks, beating Herndon, and then narrowly losing to Chantilly, and you see Westfield beating Centerville in that first round, and then losing to Robinson. So a match of 1-2, Chantilly and Robinson, both teams know how to win in the postseason.
Yeah, and it strikes me here is a lot of 9-6 games. You got the Chantilly Oakton game was 9-6, the Westfield Robinson game was 9-6, and then you go back in the mid-April when at Chantilly, the Robinson Tilly game was 9-6. So is that going to be what we're going to look at in that game? I have a vested interest in this game personally because obviously we match up with the number 1 out of Concord for the first round of the regional tournament. So. I don't know if I want to play either one of those teams, but I have no choice, unfortunately.
So Robinson and Chantilly are playing in the Concord District Finals. Taking a look at the Concord District All-District first team. Will Quinn from Chantilly, the Coach of the Year. His Chargers are the number 1 seed and playing in the final. Actually, Kevin Broderick. Excuse me, Kevin. Yeah, Kevin Broderick, Coach of the Year for Chantilly. See, I just read what's on the screen. I don't think, but yeah, Kevin Broderick, exactly. We're going to go back to Monica Moore now to take us through the Dulles District.
All right, so one last district to talk about, but the Dulles district not yet underway. They'll kick things off tomorrow night, and Broad Run coming in as the #1 seed, having a sensational season so far. And of course, they are the favorites to win the Dulles district, but Briar Woods also having a great season as well. Those two teams squared off against each other last week. Broad Run coming out the victor in that one. You see defeating Briar Woods 16-8, turning on the Jets, defeating Loudoun County actually 16-11 against Loudoun County. But Broad Run wrapping up their 5th straight regular season title in the Dulles district. Ryan Madigan having a phenomenal season so far. You see in just 2 games last week, 15 goals and 5 assists for Madigan. So people looking for big things out of him during the Dulles district tournament. All right, guys, well, now let's go into the Triple Edge girls lacrosse report.
All right, so we have Richard DeSoma, the head coach of the Langley girls lacrosse team, on the line to talk about the Langley Saxons. Richard, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thanks, Coach. So, Coach, first things first, let's talk about where you think your Saxons are right now, just beating Stonebridge 11-2 in the semifinals of the Liberty District.
Where we are?
Yeah, where do you think your team is right now, motivation-wise, momentum-wise?
Well, it was obviously a big win because it was a really tough win. Stonebridge, it's 2 games we played this year against them, and both times it was a struggle. We had to come back, and we were very fortunate, to beat them. So, of course, the girls are feeling pretty good about that.
Defeating Stonebridge 9-8 on April 6th, and then defeating Stonebridge 11-10 most recently.
Yeah,
Right.
and it creates a great matchup now with Madison, who you played earlier in the year. I believe it was the first game of the year. It was a 12-11 game, Madison. I'm sure that adds a little bit of motivation, or a little bit more motivation for your girls moving forward. Do you use that as a motivating factor? Do you have to use that, Coach?
Not really. It's there.
Yeah.
It's either there or not there, but it's there. We played them, Madison, the first game of the year. Actually, it's the first time we'd seen a field because of the snow. And I was really pleased with how we played such a good game against them. Although when I went back and looked at the film, I'm thinking, look at all the mistakes.
Yeah, as coaches, we always scratch our head, right?
Yeah, but I remember coming out of that thinking, gosh, considering the fact that we didn't have much practice time before that, or any practice team on the field before that, we were in the gym. I was really pleased with our performance. Right then, I figured, we got a good team here.
Yeah, and it looks like you've run off a lot of quality wins towards the end of the season. You had one little hiccup against Battlefield, so you must be pleased with the way they're playing right now.
Very pleased with the way they're playing. We would love to have another shot at Battlefield. We like to call them out again on that.
Yeah.
We thought we were kind of underachieved in that game. In fact, we know we underachieved. Although I'll tell you, their goalie was outstanding that night. It was a good goalie that had an outstanding night. And but there's some things we could have done done better. So, but we like to meet them again. Mm-hmm. We think we've competed. We've had 3 losses. We think we've competed on each one, and I gotta feel good about that.
Going back to that Battlefield game, I know coaches hate when I say this, but could you consider that a good win, reminding the girls what it's like to lose and that feeling that they don't want to feel?
Yeah, I think they came away from that game wanting to do it again. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They knew that there's things they could have done differently, and they knew they underachieved in that game. But other than that, we competed against Loudoun Valley very well. I consider them a state playoff level team.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They lost to St. Stephen's by only 1.
Mm-hmm.
Very good team, very well coached. And Madison's the same. It's a very good team. We're fortunate to be in the final against them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And going back to that first game against Madison, how have you seen your team grow since then? Obviously not a lot of practice time before that game. Same deal with on the boys' side as well. How have you seen your team grow now to face them again?
Well, in many ways, every team out there really gets better as the season goes on, and they all grow and get better. You see the girls getting better, from the beginning to the end. So I think they find their place, and they find their game. Each team has their own game style, and we've worked ours out. I think we're ready for it.
Have you had a chance to scout the Warhawks at all throughout the year?
Oh yeah.
So you have your game plan all worked out for them?
A number of times.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go over our game plan tomorrow with the girls. We pretty much know, that they're very good. Their goalie's very good. They're quick in transition. They're strong on the draws, and they're aggressive to goal. So, they've got a real package there. So we know what we need to do. We know what they're good at. We know what we need to do to counter it. It should be a good game. Just hope to be competitive. That's the main thing. Always hope to be competitive. Always hope to be in a position to win in the end.
Yeah, don't we all?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Richard DeSoma, the head coach of the Langley girls lacrosse team. Best of luck in the Liberty District Finals on Friday night.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Coach.
Okay.
Let's jump right back into these Triple H girls lacrosse rankings, and you see Madison and Langley, two of the top three, in Madison with the top spot with 13 first place votes.
Yeah, and Madison's been there all year, and that could change now. After Friday, that could change. Langley has been 2 or 3 throughout the year, and this week they just happen to be 3. And then last week they were 2, and so forth. So it's going to be a very good battle. And, as far as the girls go, it's probably one of those games that if you like girls lacrosse, you're going to love this game. That's for sure.
Got to check out that Madison girls lacrosse team play South Lakes in the first round of the Liberty District Tournament. And it was a 12-0 score, but that's not truly the score it should have been. They held back quite a bit. They actually didn't shoot when they could have. They waited for a sign from the sidelines when they were able to shoot. They were working through all their plays. They got the most they could out of that game because they had played South Lakes just the game previously, and it was to be nice, kind of a bloodbath.
Yeah.
So they decided to work on some things, get the most they could out of that game.
Yeah, and sometimes that's a good way to go. Sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
In this particular case, obviously it was something that the coaches had decided. Let's work on everything. We'll treat it as, I don't want to say this, but treat it as a practice to get better. And it looks like they did what they had to do in coming out and then beating Marshall in the second round in the semis. So. They're going to be well coached. They're going to be prepared. And Coach DeSoma has his hands full. But it could be 12-11 Langley. I mean, you just don't know.
Madison beating Marshall 17-6 in the semifinals. Allie Beaton has had 6 goals. Allison Hahn had 3 goals and 2 assists. That's the big scorers for Madison. Bree Hayden scored 2 goals with 3 assists. In Langley's win, Margot Swamley had 5 goals. Nikki Pritchett had 3 goals. At one point, Langley was down by 4 goals, but they kept their composure, and some key draws helped them get the win. So Madison and Langley. One thing that Coach Amanda Counts told me after that quarterfinal game is Madison really focuses on the team. They don't try to elevate one player. And it was interesting because Coach Counts, she played at W.T. Woodson. And when she played almost a decade ago, she said, you have one star player that make or breaks your team. You have one good player, but now one good player isn't enough. You have to have a complete team, and that's her philosophy.
Well, and that's the evolution of the lacrosse in this region.
Yeah.
Back then, 10 years ago, one player, both on the boys' side and the girls' side, could dominate a lacrosse game. I mean, heck, when I was coaching at Robinson, we had a kid, Mac Hammer, in the mid-'90s, and that kid, he didn't come off the field. He was like the Energizer Bunny. It was unbelievable. So, I could see that now, and she's right. She's definitely right. You've got to have more than just one kid, and you've got to focus on the sum of all the parts. So
Nicole DePaz, the Coach of the Year in the Liberty District for Marshall. We just took a look at the Liberty District All-District First Team. I want to touch on what I just said: a complete team for Madison, Allie Beaton, Kiki Brown, Liz Goff, Allison Hahn, Kelly Wagaman, all first team for the Liberty District for the Warhawks.
Yeah, so they've got a number of players that can get the job done, and I wish I had that luxury.
Let's move on to the Patriot District now in girls lacrosse. Take a look at the bracket. Woodson easily beating Lee in the first round, then winning by 4 goals against South County to advance to the finals. And just like the boys' side, Annandale, they will meet Annandale, who beat West Potomac 17-8, then beat West Springfield 18-10. West Springfield, the number 2 seed, losing to Annandale by 8 goals to set up Annandale-Woodson.
Yeah, and looking at this, I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. Both teams have scored 16 or more goals in both their games leading up to this one. Previously, in mid-April, you look back, Annandale beat Woodson, 14-10. So, I think it's going to be another shootout, another up and down a field, and makes for an exciting game. That's for darn sure. And it's interesting because you look at the rankings. Woodson is 5, Annandale 7. But earlier in the year, Annandale beat them. So, that tells me again that Woodson, now on the girls' side, that they're getting better and better and better and better come playoff time.
You look at the Patriot District and the Liberty District, both Langley and Madison in the Liberty for boys and girls, and it's Annandale-Woodson in the Patriot District boys and girls. Doubleheader. I mean, you can't get much better action than that. Let's move on to the Concord District, where, again, there's some great action as well. Oakton and Westfield earning the first round bye, and guess what? They will meet in the finals, but Westfield just getting by Chantilly 12-11.
Yeah, and that was a heck of a ball game from what I understand. I spoke with the Chantilly coach briefly, and she had said that she was a little disappointed that they weren't able to pull the victory out. But with that being said, she was very proud of her team because they played a heck of a lacrosse game. And she's excited moving forward with the regional tournament because she feels that she's going to be able to make some noise. So this is going to be a barn burner, And again, on that girls' side, they love the run and gun, and they're scoring a lot of goals. So, Oakton scored 20 against Robinson. They, earlier in the year, they've put up, in the teens several other games. So that's going to be fun to see.
Let's move on to the National District now and take a look at Yorktown beating Wakefield, shutting out Wakefield. You don't see that very often in lacrosse. Then beating Edison 17-7. So not too many tough games for Yorktown, the number 1 seed. Hayfield, on the other hand, dominating Stewart, but having a close game against Washington and Lee, the number 2 seed Washington and Lee, to set up Yorktown and Hayfield in the finals. Yeah,
you had a little bit of an upset there, and that's similar to that 4-5 matchup, that you usually see with the 2 and 3 being so tough. Yorktown beat Hayfield 2 weeks ago. They beat them, 12-13-8, something like that. And, moving forward, that's only 2 weeks ago. So they're very familiar with each other. I'm sure they know each other very well. And, the Hayfield girls probably aren't going to forget the fact that they lost 2 weeks ago to these guys.
We're taking a look at the National District, all-district first team right here. And taking a look at Washington Lee gets the Coach of the Year. Yorktown has the Player of the Year for the National District.
Yeah.
All right, so let's kick it back to Monica Moore to take it over to Loudoun County and talk about the Dulles District.
All right, well, just like with the boys, most of the girls' quarterfinal matchups are taking place tomorrow night. So we'll go ahead and show you what the bracket looks like at this point for the Dulles District Tournament. You see George Mason getting the number 1 seed, Broad Run getting the number 2 seed, carrying on that phenomenal lacrosse tradition over at Broad Run. So next week we'll certainly get you more up to date on what's going on in the Dulles District, and unfortunately did not have the all-district for Concord and Patriot District girls. They were not able to be released to us yet, so hopefully we'll have those for you next week as well. So if you're a fan of those 2 districts, we'll get that for you as soon as we can. All right, but now let's segue into our Players Lounge segment. This week I was delighted to be joined by 2 of the top girls soccer players from around the region. Welcome to the Players Lounge. This week I'm delighted to be joined by 2 members of the South County girls soccer team, Alex Reed and Morgan Duffy. You guys are having a phenomenal season so far. And Alex, I know that you finished up your regular season on Friday with a game against Chantilly, the defending state champions. What do you think your team did well in that game, and what could you have improved upon?
I think we physically matched them. I think we did really well playing tough soccer against them, but since the officiating was kind of unfair for both sides, we didn't really get to see the skills, like compare our skills, but we really need to work on our mental toughness and just finishing out the game because we're physically there, but just not mentally there yet.
Well, and you guys have had some really big wins so far this season. People definitely started to take notice with the Westfield game. So, Morgan, what do you think are some of the things that helped you guys get some of those big wins early on?
Every player gives 110% from beginning to end, and just having the faith and trust in each player on the team that we're going to come out with the victory in the end just helps us. So it's awesome. So, yeah.
And Alex, you've gotten a reputation as a very prolific goal scorer in the area, and I know this year a lot of times defense have really been focusing on you. So how have you adjusted to that, and how has your team adjusted to that?
I like to think I adjusted pretty well, but it does get really frustrating at times. But I have the most confidence in the world in our players up top, and I would gladly take the pressure off for them to have them perform and get their time. So whatever it takes to win.
Now, I know when the season started, one thing people were talking about with South County is you had a much more inexperienced roster than some of the other teams, but you guys are both obviously senior leaders on this team and have been on the varsity team for quite some time. So, Morgan, how did you view your leadership role with the team this year?
I just think it was really important from the beginning at tryouts just to bring out the strengths from the other underclassmen players and just to make them feel as comfortable as possible because their skills come out when they're having fun. And they're really confident, and just practice together as a team just really helps us to win the games. So.
And then how about for you, Alex?
I know our main goals were to get everyone to feel like they were the same and you can't tell the difference between the freshmen and the seniors. We don't treat anyone differently. We just have fun and yeah.
So speaking of not being able to tell the difference between the freshmen and the seniors, Morgan, who are some of the players on your team that you feel like are just playing above their level and have really stepped it up?
In the back defense, last year we had Megan Ray, and this year Kristen Loria. She's taken her spot. Of course, she graduated and just is consistent completely throughout the game, and she'll win every ball and every play. So it's really nice having that back there and knowing that she'll stop every single play that comes to her.
Now we've talked about the big wins that you guys have had. There really are a lot on the resume. So Alex, what do you think has been your best team win so far?
Definitely Westfield, because when we got very lucky, our game got canceled 20 minutes into our first time we saw them, and they were winning 1-0. And since we got a good look at how they played against us, we just 10 minutes before the game came up with a 4-1-4 formation, and we just basically mapped out their weaknesses, our strengths, and we just put it on the field, and we had a lot of fun doing it. So I think that was our best win and best game this season.
Well, you guys have definitely overcome some adversity as a team, first with the inexperienced roster, and then you guys have really been hit hard by the injuries, and in particular you, Morgan, injured right now. So can you talk a little bit about how your team has dealt with that and how players have stepped up in the wake of those injuries?
I just think that the players realize that they have a job to do, and if someone is hurt or out, they need to step up and help the team out to win. And from freshmen to seniors, they've done a very good job. So I think that's why we have had wins against Woodson, and unfortunately not West Springfield, but and Westfield. Right. So yeah.
Well, and speaking of teams like West Springfield, the Patriot District is a very tough district to play soccer in. Obviously, there's South County, Lake Braddock, Woodson just moved into the district. So, Alex, what has it been like to play in the Patriot District for the past few years?
It's been a lot of fun. We know a lot of girls on the teams. We've played with them for our whole lives. So it's been challenging, but it's been a lot of fun. It's awesome.
And so what would you say, along with that, Morgan, in terms of just playing in the Patriot District, and particularly Woodson coming in and making the district even tougher than it already was?
We just go into every game having fun. It's really nice to come off at halftime and hear some of the girls like, I'm just having a great time out there. And that just helps us to win in the end. And it's not like we don't try, but we go in and just have fun, and we come out with a victory.
Well, so you guys have had a number of highlights in your career playing for South County, and of course that career is not yet over. But Alex, what would you say has been the biggest highlight so far for you?
Definitely our league game, but not the game part of it, but a former player of ours passed away in January, Andrea Graven, and we had a dedication game for her against Lee. And her big thing was Toys for Tots. She always donated to them. So to get into our game for free, basically brought in a toy, and we had a Marine there, and we had so many toys. We got
1,000 toys or more.
Thousands of toys. And even though we didn't play very well, it was just really great having a charity or working towards something and having her family there, her parents, her sisters. It was something I'll never forget. It was nice.
Would you say the same? Or?
Yeah, it was incredible because the lead players even made shirts for Andrea, and when we retired her jersey at halftime, the lead players surrounded the field with us too. And Andrea's sister and father were out there, and we all just came together, and it was really nice of them to do that.
It definitely shows the camaraderie in your district and how you guys, I know you know a lot of the players, as you said, you play club with them, you know them, and so just really joining together for such a good cause is a pretty amazing highlight. And last question for both of you guys, I always ask this. So a lot of younger players watch the show, and so Alex, what advice would you give for younger players about the most important things to focus on in soccer?
I would say work as hard as you can, because even if you don't get the results, you just need to be committed, and you learn so many life lessons from being on a team, from getting to know so many girls. Like, I've known her since preschool, just from soccer. So it's just do what you do and just work hard.
What advice would you give Morgan?
Just stay committed mentally and physically. Our goal since we were 4 is to play college soccer, and because we've had that commitment, desire to play and practicing every day and all the weekends, it's just paid off tremendously.
All right, well, congratulations on your season so far, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about girls soccer. Obviously, we previewed the La Crosse Liberty District matchups, that Madison-Langley rivalry becoming big in lacrosse, but in soccer, there was a big Liberty District matchup going on this past Friday. We previewed it for you last week. Of course, Langley squaring off against McLean. So we have some highlights of this one for you. And Paul, this McLean team, we were so impressed with them, clicking on all cylinders. Melissa Downey getting things fired off, but you said during the game, so many dangerous weapons on this McLean team.
Absolutely, and led by Andy Rom-Ness, who had 2 goals in this game. So many dangerous weapons with Katie Jensen, a goal and an assist. And right there, you're going to see Andy Rom-Ness getting the first goal, the eventual game-winning goal.
Absolutely, but you do have to give a lot of credit to Langley's goalkeeper, Lindsay Amador. She really had a phenomenal showing. Perhaps the final score of the game doesn't quite reflect how well she played. Katie Jensen there, beautiful move. That one went over the goal. She would right that ship during the second half, even though she missed a couple during the first.
Yeah, there's another one with Jensen. She was shooting high there in the first half, but she brought that ball down for sure in the second.
And so here you see yet another opportunity for McLean. They really got so many opportunities during the first half. Here you're going to see another one. That one, there's a beautiful save by Lindsay Amador, only a sophomore. One of the best opportunities that Langley had during the first half on some of these kicks right here by Meredith Doherty. Logan Tapscott in the goal for McLean was celebrated as one of the 2 seniors on this Highlander team at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, and just the pressure that you see McLean put on Langley, and Amador did. She did exactly what she needed to do, but some of those goals you really can't blame her for, because they were just fantastic goals, including this one.
And here you're going to see Katie Jensen finally get one in the back of the net. Rose Samavago, number 4, also having a big game. And there, Andy Rom-Ness, you see it just turn and go straight in the goal. A beautiful, beautiful goal there by Rom-Ness. And then, of course, at the end of the game, the trophy being given out, always a trophy at the end of this Langley-McLean rivalry, this time it going to the Highlanders. And Paul, you had an opportunity after the game to talk with Andy Rom-Ness and Tiffany Washington.
Basically, we just tried to get it wide because they had so many people in the middle. And then once we got it wide, just play crosses and hopefully get one in.
Mm-hmm. So this is, obviously a big rivalry. Can you talk about, winning 4-0 over your rivals?
Oh, it feels great. Like, we went into the game kind of nervous about it because we didn't know we'd come out and set the pace. But once I scored, I think with like 20 minutes in, we just knew that we had it.
Mm-hmm. So how this team now a 3-game winning streak, how do you guys feel like you're doing, the momentum going into the playoffs?
We just got to keep it up because we've had this kind of momentum before and we've lost it. So we just got to stay confident and keep doing what we're doing.
And Coach, this is your first game in the Langley and McLean rivalry. I mean, have you gotten a good sense of what it's about?
I have. It's a really good feeling. It's a good rivalry, and both teams play very well tonight.
Can you talk about the offensive pressure you guys put on in the first half?
I told the girl, like every game, I tell the girls we have to come out from the beginning, because once you set the precedent from the beginning, then the other team will kind of back off and they'll be scared, and then you can urge on in the game.
With all that pressure, though, were you surprised, though, that it was only a 1-0 lead? What did you talk about at halftime?
Like to reiterate what Andy said, I talked about getting the ball out wide because they were packing in the middle, so our midfield wasn't winning the ball as much. So I told the girls to play the ball over the top, and we have to get the ball out wide and look to cross the ball and finish.
All right, head coach Tiffany Washington and our player of the game, Andy Rom.
All right, and as we mentioned, it was senior night during this game, but the juniors on the McLean roster, they are stacked coming into next year.
Absolutely. You see all the juniors that did such a good job for the Highlanders, and to know that they do come back next year. You see Andy Bromness right there, courtesy of Fat Boy Photos. I mean, they're a good team this year. They're going to be an even better team next year.
Absolutely, but that Liberty District is so strong. Another team that's in the Liberty District this year, Stonebridge, has really been making waves. They're led by Emily Fredrickson. We've talked a lot about her on the program. Of course, she was the one that had the game-winning penalty kick when Stonebridge squared off against Robinson earlier this year. And last week, we previewed the big matchup between Stonebridge and Chantilly that happened last Wednesday night, and it was the Bulldogs getting the better of the Chargers 2-1 in that matchup. Of course, in soccer, you know, one goal makes the difference, and that's what happened in this game. But those are obviously two of the top teams in this area. They may get another crack at each other before it's all said and done.
Yeah, and it's nice to see an out-of-district, a region game out of district so late in the season. It gives these teams, both Chantilly and Stonebridge, a chance to really sharpen up their tools before they head into the district tournament schedule.
And Paul, you and I were talking about the fact that there's another big game coming up, Chantilly-Robinson. That'll give Chantilly a little bit of a chance to right their ship a little bit going into the Concord District Tournament and square off against one of their top rivals in the Concord.
That's a game I circled on my calendar, and I'll be at that game covering it for the Fairfax Times. And you know, Chantilly, yes, I'm really interested to see what Robinson is all about. They're a team with such talent. Had a disappointing year last year. This year was all about redemption, and it still doesn't seem like they've completely put it together. But don't forget how strong and talented this Robinson team is. A win over Chantilly on Thursday will really vault them into, give them the momentum as the district tournament starts.
All right, and one other Concord District girls soccer team having a great season so far, the Westfield Bulldogs. Of course, I talked about the South County Stallions' big win over Westfield. Westfield last week getting a big win over Washington Lee. The star of the game, Abby Sams, getting the game winner for the Bulldogs. She's having a fantastic season for Westfield. So really the Concord District shaping up to be an exciting one. The Patriot District, when you have teams like South County, Lake Braddock shaping up to be an interesting one. Really all the soccer districts are going to be exciting. So of course we'll begin coverage of those soccer tournaments when they start happening. All right, well, let's segue now into the boys soccer report, and it was a doubleheader at McLean last Friday night. The boys also squaring off two of the top boys teams in the region. Let's take a look at some of these highlights because these were two very evenly matched teams. But Langley, Paul, we were so impressed with that defensive back line led by Roshan Patel, and then they have a lot of offensive weapons to go along with Patel, so they're just quite a balanced team.
Yeah, Roshan Patel, Farhan Khan, two great midfielders for the Saxons. Then you see Josh Ellis with the goal, and Daniel Flitcroft meeting him to celebrate. I was really impressed with number 10, Daniel Flitcroft, during the game as well.
Absolutely. He's one of the players that plays on a top club team in this area, and you could really tell just all the experience paying off because not scoring a goal in that effort, but setting up some opportunities there. A nice save. We saw lots of them during this game. And then McLean, led by their team leader, of course, Tim Whitebread, having a great season for the Highlanders. So we're really excited. Jan Gunderson ends up getting the game winner for the Saxons, and you see Roshan Patel there holding the trophy for his Langley club. Whitebread scoring the goal. He's had 6 in the past 3 games.
Impressive job by Whitebread, but again, Langley controlled this game. McLean didn't make it close, but it was all Saxons on last Friday night.
All right, and I did get to speak with Jan Gunderson after the game. He was the player of the match for this one. I'm standing here with our player of the game, Jan Gunderson. Jan, you get a big win over your rivals, McLean. How does it feel?
Oh, it feels amazing. Every year, McLean is by far the biggest game, And no matter what, it's always a tight game. And to come out like this, it just really sends a message to everyone else out there. It's a great win.
And obviously you had the game winner tonight. Can you take me through that goal from start to finish?
I got the ball. I just turned, saw the opening. I shot it. I mean, it's great it came again in a game like this. It's huge. I don't know. Just went in.
The one thing in watching you guys play is it's an absolute team effort. Every single player on the field 100% all the time. Can you talk about that team dynamic?
Well, I think this year, more than any year, we have such a close group of guys, and we just all work so hard. And we all have such good friendships, and I think it really just helps us in the game to have such a strong bond.
And finally, this week you beat Stonebridge, then you beat McLean. What are the things that you think have contributed the most to those two big wins?
Honestly, I think it's just putting in 100% effort every game. If you do that, you can leave the game with your head up high, and we do that every game, and it shows. We're 11-0 now, and it's a good win.
All right, so Langley with a huge win over their area rivals, McLean. All right, and Gunderson having a big game for Langley. One player we haven't even really talked about, Paul, was Robert Maffei, the goalkeeper for McLean, only a sophomore. He was tested early. There's a nice picture there of Tim Whitebread, the goal scorer for McLean. But Robert Maffei really having a nice game for the Highlanders, and again, only a sophomore, so certainly expect big things for him.
Certainly putting a sophomore in a big game like this, a big season here for the Saxons, and he's really stepped up.
All right, and then of course McLean getting a little bit of a chance for redemption against another one of the top teams in the area, Stonebridge, coming up. So this is certainly one to watch and to circle on your calendars for tomorrow night. Obviously, we talked last week about Stonebridge and Langley's matchup, Langley getting the better of the Bulldogs in that one, but the Liberty District absolutely stacked this year in boys soccer, so that's going to be a really exciting tournament coming up.
Yeah, most definitely. You see Langley beating both those teams, but not by a very large margin, so it'll be interesting to see what McLean is able to do against the Bulldogs.
And another team we have to mention going over to the National District is Yorktown. Has really been catching a lot of people's eyes lately because after starting off a little sluggishly, which we've seen them do for the past few years, they have really been on a roll as of late. You see all the big victories. They're 7-0 over Wakefield. Lots of different players for Yorktown able to put the ball in the net. And so they're certainly a team that I think people are expecting could win the National District. Head coach David Wood really getting that team into playing form at this juncture of the season.
What I'm worried about is them playing against National District opponents, which isn't the toughest district to play against. But then you see a 2-1 win over Robinson. You see a 2-0 win over Woodson. So it's not just in district games that they're excelling at. They're doing a great job against out-of-district opponents as well.
And certainly with that team, one of the big reasons for their success as of late is the seniors. And we've seen it time and time again how important a senior class can be. And certainly having all that leadership on a team that's used to the system, that plays well together. We talked obviously with Morgan Duffy and Alex Reed earlier about their inexperienced roster, but having a couple of seniors on a squad that can be so integral is very important. And we're seeing that right now with South County girls. We're seeing it with Yorktown boys.
Yeah. When the players that have been there before, that have that experience, they really shine when it gets down to crunch time, and it's in crunch time now.
All right, well, let's segue into some baseball and talk about a team that's been having a phenomenal season, Paul. We've talked about West Springfield quite a bit on this program. We've talked about Bobby Wall, their star pitcher, but Charlie Morgan is also having a great season for the Spartans. They have a lot on their roster.
Yeah, Charlie Morgan, 3 consecutive home runs in that game. What's big about that is because of Bobby Wall, there's professional scouts following this West Springfield team. So for someone like Charlie Morgan to step up so big, 3 consecutive home runs, that's good for him and his chances because professional and college scouts come out to watch West Springfield.
All right, so West Springfield, obviously a story we're going to continue to follow because, as Paul was saying, they've garnered so much attention, and certainly people have very high expectations for them as the season finishes out. Another team that has been having a great showing as of late, of course, is the Marshall baseball team. 3 wins in a row, and a big reason for that has been Jake Bennett.
Yeah, Jake Bennett in 3 games, he's 6 for 6, 4 walks, 4 RBIs, and 4 runs scored, so a perfect on-base percentage for Jake Bennett. And Marshall, I mean, it's a team, small school, big heart, we talk about it, but they're the perennial underdogs, and it's always nice to see a Marshall team have success.
And finally, another team experiencing a lot of success this season, the Centerville Wildcats, squaring off against district foe Herndon, coming up with the huge shutout victory for the Wildcats, and a big reason for their success is their pitcher.
Well, thanks for this setup here, Monica, because I did a story on Ryan Ashew in the Fairfax Times this week on Ryan Ashew and Cam Walter, the first baseman for the Wildcats. And Ashew, 10 strikeouts against Herndon in a shutout. He's had 4 of his last 5 outings have been complete game shutouts. That's extremely impressive for a pitcher. So, and Ashew had 16 strikeouts in a complete game shutout against Robinson. That's a school record with 16 strikeouts. And Cam Walter, he missed 16 games last season. Huge, big quarterback for the Centerville team, going to VMI to play on a football scholarship. He's been hitting the seams off the ball as of late, just home run after home run, the pitching defense 3-run home run that helps teams win games. That's what Centerville is doing right now. That's why they're the top team in the Concord District right now.
And they certainly have their eyes on that Concord District Championship and moving into the region. So we will continue to follow the Wildcats and their standout players, both Walter and, of course, their pitcher, Ashew. Well, finally, another thing we certainly want to talk about and have you mark on your calendars, rowing is really heating up. This past weekend, they had the championship heat so they could get together the seeding for the state rowing championships, which are going to be on Saturday, May 22nd on the Occoquan. And it's always a great event. You'll see some pictures here of some of the teams vying for those top seeds. And lots of teams really have been showing themselves to be great contenders for this. Obviously, Thomas Jefferson, always one to watch. TC Williams always has good teams. And so certainly something that you might want to go out and check out, especially if you've never been to a regatta before.
I agree.
All right, and then finally, let's preview our game of the week. We've already talked so much about this, Paul, but I think it's worthy of the build-up. The Liberty District Lacrosse Championships taking place over at Marshall on Friday. We've already previewed the lineup for you. On the girls' side, Langley and Madison. On the boys' side, the exact same slate. So for the Saxons and Warhawk fans, it's going to be a battle. Well, again, thanks so much for joining us. Before we go, once again, we want to thank the folks that make our program possible, our good friends at CCI Screen Printing, and Craig Strabutzel and Dan Sousa for the phenomenal photos for today. Special thanks to Triple Edge Lacrosse for sponsoring our lacrosse report. And don't forget, you can get copies of this program at PressBoxVideo.com. Check out our website and become a fan of the Fairfax Sports Network on our Facebook page. Finally, please send us any suggestions or story ideas that you have. Well, for Paul Frummel, I'm Monica Moore. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.